Welcome to DLB Radio Show with DJ Rami and DJ Mercy. It's August 11th, 2017 in USA time, and it's August 12th, 2017 in Manila time. Today we are talking about self-love. So much to talk about it that this is just part one of part 4. Wow, so much we will be talking about. So today, part 1 is self-love, what it really is.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back. I think this is a very important topic because every time I talk about self-love, people have different understanding of what it is. What is your understanding of self-love right now?
Wow. It is hard to put and articulate in words, but I assure you that it's loving every little piece of me as a treasure, as the most wonderful, the most precious, the word greatest. And if you have been a mother or a parent, it's as close as to that kind of feeling where you see your son or daughter in a complete, most perfect child in the world. That's the self-love that I would say I'm experiencing now.
Okay, what was your understanding of self-love maybe a few years back? How different is it?
What I remember is I didn't care for the self-love word because it connotated to me egotistic, narcissistic. Those people that just look at themselves and only consider themselves selfish. All those kind of adjectives were coming up when someone would say self-love. How about you?
Well, whenever I say self-love, or whenever I say, you should look into loving yourself, the most common reaction I get is, oh, I do love myself. I mean, I pamper myself. I make sure that I buy things for myself. I go to the salon at least twice a month, and all those things. So really, a lot of people have different definitions of self-love. And you mentioned little parts of you. Could you explain that a bit?
Yeah, I don't know. When I see self-love now, I see the little parts of me I would talk about, that inner child of mine, or that part of me that I may see that is imperfect, or that I am not good at certain things. I used to compare myself to others a lot and didn't think I was very intelligent. Not that I was dummy or stupid, but I thought I was not really that brainy, because I was not too much of a good student. And I love to daydream and be more creative. So the academic world, it felt to me that was something I could not obtain. And thus I was less than others. And in doing that, I could tell you that there's that piece of me that now I can. So when I say pieces of me, I see like the part of me that thought that she was not intelligent enough, or the part of me that thought I was not skilled at something. Those are the parts that I see in me.
And then there are other people who actually have the opposite experience of what you're saying. I mean, in my interviews with people, and the opposite is they know they excel, they know they're intelligent, and because of that, when they see somebody who isn't, they actually get irritated. So they like the part that is intelligent, they don't like the part that is not intelligent. And that's where this thing on self-love comes in. Because while the person thinks that he is intelligent, there is also a part of him that is not intelligent, the opposite side of polarity.
Mm-hmm.
And that not intelligent part exists within, but is blackened like a shadow, feeling unloved. And that same part is projected to the outside world, and so when he sees somebody who's not intelligent, maybe not out loud, not in public, but inside his head, it's like, oh, I don't like this person is not intelligent.
Right, it's so, like a mirror effect.
Yeah. So self-love is often misconstrued as pampering myself with material things or wanting someone.
Or going to the spa.
Or going to the spa, yeah. Or buying expensive watches and cars. Or wanting someone to love me. So there is this hole that only love can fill. So instead of being able to love ourselves, we try to get love from outside. As for example, I want you to love me. What time are you coming home? Why are you not paying attention to me anymore? So we expect other people to fill that hole, but how can we depend on others to fill that hole or to love us when, number one, they may not be dependable at all. Number two, maybe they don't have that much love at all. And that's why it's really very important to understand self-love. How about if we introduce a new term and we call it inner love? Would that make a difference? Would that make it easier to understand? What do you think?
Yeah, it could be because, self, the word self can bring the connotation of selfishness, right? And right. If we move it to inner love, we could say that this is about you, not about being selfish, but of acknowledging who you are, acknowledging the wholeness of your beingness. Don't you think?
I agree. So where would you start? Let's say, okay, so here is Mercy right now, and let's just give it a number. Let's say you love 50% of yourself, right?
Right.
So you love 50% of yourself, for the things that you have, like you're a good counselor, you're a good teacher, you're a good mother. But there's this other 50% that you don't really know about. I can't say hate, but you don't know about. And sometimes this 50% is projected to the outside world.
I would say that when I started some of the inner work and including the Power of Your Amazing Story came from that, I went through the understanding when I was aware that there is half of me that I had never really looked in, and that other half, how I discover it or how I exposed it in my work, was really to say if I think I'm a good mother, and people tell me I'm a good mother, then I have to have another half of that, which says I'm a bad mother. And I want to search that bad mother. And sure enough, there were moments in my being a mother that I felt that I had not been the best for my son. But I did not acknowledge that, of course. I put it to the side and put it in a closet, right? Those thoughts come in and you say, oh, no, it can't be. And I don't want to even see that I have been a bad mother. So we negate it. But we think that we erase it or send it out there somewhere in the empty space. But in reality, what we do is just put her in some kind of a closet inside of us and negate that is part of us too. Until someone triggers that part of me.
Let's call it a shadow.
Exactly. We'll call it a shadow because it is in that back side of us.
You know, I would always say the hardest part of us to love is the part of who we once were, the shadow of who we once were. So let me give you an example. For example, I used to go to work and then I would always arrive late. And so one day I say to myself, I got to change. Beginning tomorrow, I'm not going to be late again. So I come to work on time. 1 week later, when I see a colleague come to work late, I will be the first to tell the colleague off. You're late, you shouldn't be late, right? Without realizing that what the colleague is showing is actually who I once were. Now, let's make it a bit harder. Let's say, for example, that a person named John has a daughter, and his daughter was raped. Now, John, of course, would begin hating rape and the rapist because he got hurt of what happened to his daughter. I mean, he loved his daughter very much. But what if John was a rapist in his past life? So we're moving here from right now to considering the possibility of a past life. Still on the theme of the most difficult to love is who we once were. So let's go back to John in a past life where he had raped somebody. And before he died, he was very repentant about what he did. And then when he died, he reviewed his life and then he said, I don't want to be a rapist anymore. So what he does is he asks the help of a friendly soul. Let's call him Vincent. He says, Vincent, in my next lifetime, I'm gonna come down and I want you to help me. I want you to teach me the lesson of rape. I want you to rape my daughter. So that was their agreement. So both of them come, and then going back to the scene, Vincent, the rapist, rapes the daughter of John. And so John is very angry at Vincent. But you see, it is not until we learn to forgive who we once were will the story end. Because it is by forgiving who we once were, in the form of, in the story, Vincent the rapist, that is the only time that we learn to first forgive ourselves. So Vincent here is a mirror image of John the rapist in a past life. And so with that example, I just brought it to the extreme of rape, but in our life it is often the part that we cannot come to terms with and love is always a part of who we once were. Do you have an experience like that, Mercy?
Um, yes, and you know, this brings me to judging, how much we judge, um, and because of the judging, how much we separate, and how much we are not able to forgive ourselves. And in not being able to forgive ourselves, very hard then to do inner love.
Well, there is a history to this, and it happens at the age of about 4, 5, until about 6 or 8. That's the height of it. And that is the age when parents, most parents, would tell the child, yes, no. So the child, because of yes and no, let's say the child had a drawing that he made, and then he comes up to his mother and says, Mom, Mom, look at this, look at this. And then at that time, the mom was very busy, so the mom says, no, stop it, I'm busy. And so what the child will do is he would take the drawing and hide it with him. And that talent for drawing actually goes behind and hides. And so over time, this child would now have pieces of him that are dying. It turns black. It dies, and then it hides behind. And so really, as we grow up, teenager, adulthood, when you look at a person, the person is actually torn apart. You have, part of the face here taken out, part of the nose is gone, and so on and so forth. And those are the shadows. And another way a shadow would form is when the child receives too much praise for something that he did. For example, oh, John, I like it very much when you are very, very responsible. You're a very, very good boy. In a healthy situation, that's fine. But in a situation where the child is lacking in love, the child would actually grab that kind of attention and keep it in his memory. And every time he would see somebody who is irresponsible, he would hate that person. Because by loving only one side, which is the responsible John, we actually create its exact opposite, its polarity, which is the irresponsible John. And that irresponsible John hides right behind us so that mommy and daddy would love us, and then later on our friends would love us, our girlfriend, our wife would love us, so on and so forth. So it's really an effort to be accepted and loved. And that is the sacrifice of the shadow. The shadow sacrifices itself so that we can reintegrate ourselves in society and be accepted. But when you think about it, we don't need to feed on the love from the outside. We can actually begin to fill ourselves with our own inner love, beginning with those parts of us that we hid. And many times when we begin loving those shadows, all of the talents that were hidden, like the story of the little boy with the drawing, they start coming back. And one day we find that we have so many talents all of a sudden without realizing it has been there all along.
Right. And in reality, there goes the story of love, right? And so we see and we have heard that dark side of us, that so-called negative or shadow, is the imperfect and the bad thing, the one to hate, right, instead of love. And yet, it is the shadow, and it's called the shadow because loves you so much that it decided to retrieve to the back so that you could be who the outside world wants you to be. It's the ultimate sacrifice, huh?
It is, yeah. Uh, and one thing that I did was I became very, very conscious about the things that I hated. So as I went through my day, I wake up in the morning, brush my teeth, get to drive to work. So I would observe anything and everything that would tick me off, or that would, make me angry, blow my top. Then I would make a mental note of it. For a time that when I can be alone, like when I come home, and that is the time that I start to think about, why did I get angry? Why was I ticked off? What did I hate about this? Because these things that we hate are actually projections of that shadow part that, quote unquote, blackened and then moved to the back.
Right.
And so when I look at the situation, let's say, for example, I am irked by somebody who is late, and then I realize, because I was late before. And when I was late before, instead of loving myself, okay, Rami, you were late before, it's okay, but we're going to change now. What I did was I reprimanded myself. Sometimes I self-flagellate for days on end for the things that I've done, thinking that if I do that, it will prevent me from doing things again. But yes, it does, but the repercussion is that I begin to hate, because I hated that part of me. And so the parts of me that I hate project itself, so that it would come into my awareness. It's like saying, hey, Rami, look, I'm here. Please pay attention to me. I'm here. I'm not lost. I'm not gone. So that we can learn to recognize it. We can learn to see that, whatever it is out there that is irking us or making us angry is actually in us, reminding us not to forget. And so I bring that to my consciousness. Oh, okay, so I was late before, now it's all right. And then I learn to love myself. Whether, good or bad, I learn to love myself. It doesn't mean that I continue becoming late or doing bad things. And the one thing that I notice is that I soften up. So the next time somebody is late, I'm no longer angry. I'm no longer pissed, or I'm no longer irked, by these things. And that is when I know that I have done the job of
inner love.
Inner love, yes.
Yes, yes. Because all of a sudden you're loving their parts. You're
Yes.
loving. It's not being pushed. And as you talk, I realize that all this comes to bear because at the core of our being, it's about being whole.
Exactly.
And so eventually your soul, your spirit, will move you to an awareness of wholeness. And when that happens, then starts that awareness. All of a sudden, a lot of people have come to me, and all of a sudden they were fine, everything was going fine, and then all of a sudden it exploded in their world. And when you turn around, when you start digging, it's because all of a sudden the trigger of wholeness comes to bear. And they have done so much of cutting themselves into pieces and judging themselves so much and self-flagellating that all of a sudden it's almost like an explosion occurs. An inner war, an Armageddon occurs. And but it's really occurring because the inner soul spirit is getting to that place where that wants to be whole, wants to be one. And so this will be triggered. And so a lot of clients of mine, when they're in awakening spiritually and they're seeing that they're whole and they want to be one with God, all of a sudden starts having some emotional roller coasters and start seeing things that they didn't think it would be possible or would be our journey to oneness, because it's all about the shadow or all about emotional conflict or chaos, But it's really all that self-hate that we have done that comes to bear to say, but we need to heal this.
You know, what you mentioned is true, because every time the dark side of me comes to light means bringing our consciousness. Consciousness equals light. You know? So when I bring my consciousness to the dark parts of me, it lightens up. It's as simple as that. It lightens up. And when it lightens up, it's like I used to have a chopped body. Some parts are missing, and then suddenly they light up. You know? And the way I can tell that I have been doing inner work, inner love, is when I can love others more. When I see myself being more gentle to others, more patient to others, it is because I have learned to become more loving to myself, more gentle to myself, more patient to myself. You know? So that's my measurement of you know, the progress that I've been doing. And so whenever a person does inner loving, what happens is the love that we have becomes bigger and bigger. Meaning to say, in the past, before doing inner loving, you know, the tendency is for us to be very selective about who we love. You know, I love my child, I don't love your child. I love my husband, you know, I hate your husband. I love my brother, I hate my sister. You know. But really, the things that we don't like, we don't love, the things that we hate, are really parts of us. So another measurement, aside from being patient, gentle, and loving, is to check how much of all we can love. Are we moving towards loving inclusively, everybody, everything, or are we being selective with the things that we love?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good measurement to start. And you know, it's maybe even better sometimes. You know, sometimes language is key to our healing. If the word shadow or dark self is not somewhere where you can be open to it, then starting to look at the words as when you have been selective, when you have been excluding things from your awareness, at least that will invite you to start the process of inclusion, the process of wholeness, the process of welcoming. And in reality, the surprise thing is if you're in the right zone, meaning if you're in the awareness that what you are healing is part of you, and you already activated part of that inner love. When you start opening to the darkest part of you, or the shadow, amazingly, it can be healed more quicker than we ever could imagine. A lot of people think there's a whole big process, but it's not necessarily. If you have already started the inner love, if you already know exactly the deepest forgiveness and how that really works for you, then you have all the tools to embrace the dark and the shadow of yourself in a more holistic approach.
Well, for part 2 of this series on self-love, we're going to talk a little more about the shadow and the light. So we're going to go in depth this time. The shadow being the unconscious part of us, and the light being the conscious part. And we will talk about light or consciousness as love, and then the road to oneness restoration. So these are the things that hopefully all of you could listen to our next recording.
Definitely. So we're leaving part 1 of self-love, what it really is. I hope you have been able to open up to some new awareness or remembered some of that awareness that you have as innate souls looking for wholeness. And we will see you back or talk to you soon in part 2, where self-love will be talking about the shadow and the light.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Divine Love Bliss Radio. This is DJ Rami with DJ Shirley.